So I'd have to think digging tasks wouldn't be too big of a deal. Now the ground is kind of frozen here, but just kind of getting a general sense and feel for this, digging into the ground to try to kind of feel out how this shovel feels. You'll see getting in here, it is starting to do some work. Now, you need to be a little bit careful. I am starting to feel some of these handle segments are twisting, and that makes it a little difficult to work. So I'm just going to kind of tighten these down and be a little bit more careful while I'm getting to work doing a little bit of digging here. Now with the shovel head, you do have the ability to step on it. They do have a little kind of step on this shovel here. So looks to me to be set up pretty typical of most types of shovels, but obviously there's some additional gizmos on here when you look around. So speaking of that, you will notice that if you read the instructions, they say not to do chopping while you have the full handle length. So they really want you to cut it down to size and break it down so that you don't have too much force on the handle. So just to get a quick feel for this, at this point I've cut this down to size. I'm going to do some chopping on the reinforced edge against this dead stump just to start to get a feel for it. So right away, as I chop down and through, this definitely twists on me, so you need to be a little bit careful of that. I guess my initial thought is, as I'm chopping, if that's going to twist this way, I think if the edge was on this side, it would try to tighten itself. I'm going to keep experimenting here and see how this goes. Definitely loosening up on me, so that's a little bit difficult. Now let's just say, for example, I wanted to start to chop this down to size. Let's see how it can do some work here. That just kind of broke on me a little bit. I mean, you will notice that it's a little bit noisy as I use it. I got to be kind of careful to keep this head tight. It is twisting on me pretty significant. Yeah, that handle is just twisting up on me quite a bit. Doing my best to try to use axe-like technique, kind of V-cutting. Yeah, that's tough. I mean, that spins on me quite a bit. But taking a look at it here, I mean, it definitely does do some work. It's not the best chopper, but this is going to be kind of a jack of all trades. It's not going to master anything. Fact of the matter is, it can do the work. It's going to take you a lot more effort, and that spinning of the handle is definitely a pain, but it will do it. Taking a quick look at the edge there, still in one piece, no chips, no dents, no dings, so it can definitely do the work. Now I'm kind of curious about the overall ability to saw, so let's take a look at that and see if it's an effective tool. So right away, it's not the easiest to use, but it is definitely doing the work. So I'm going to keep going at it, but so far, that's actually not too bad. Now with all the other things I need to test on this multi-tool, I'm not going to go too much further, but clearly you can see that it will do the work. Now is this a little bit thicker than maybe you should be using the shovel head for? Yeah, maybe, but guess what? There's another saw in this kit. So now pulling out the wire saw, you do have the ability to use the handles of the actual multi-tool if you wish to kind of help you with the grip here. Now taking a quick look, I think this will be okay for me in this test. I'm basically just going to loop this around my hands and use it like this. Pulling it out and kind of straightening it out. It has been wrapped up in a curl for a while, but this should hopefully do alright for me. So I'm just going to stabilize the log a little bit and get to work here. The first thing I can tell you is this is binding up pretty hard, so you gotta go kind of, I don't know, I'm not used to these, so it's going to take a little bit of effort to pull it through. I may need the handles, but this actually cuts surprisingly well. This is not a technique that I am really used to. I mean, it's real easy to establish your cut, but then once you get started here, it really has a tendency to bind if you go too stiff. So if I go sharp like this, it is really hard, but if I go kind of wide like this, it is actually working better. And you can see this actually cuts surprisingly well. This is my first time, as I mentioned, using a wire saw like this, but it seems to be doing mighty fine work here. Basically at this point, I have it at the point where I should be able to just simply break this log, and there we go. So no problems. It actually worked quite well. So part of the reason why I set this up the way I did is so I could simply remove the shovel head, and that exposes the icebreaker. So at this point, let's go down to the water and let's see how this works. Now unfortunately at this point, I don't think this ice is really the best for the test, but my theory really would be, let's just say for example, you had this multi-tool and you had a completely frozen pond and had to get down to some water. Well, I mean, theoretically you should be able to use this to get through. So first we're going to use this sort of blunt pommel end and then more of the icebreaker end. So getting into it with the pommel end here, hopefully I can get down in here. Oh, the handle, let's see, I think the rubber handle, yes, the rubber handle is moving on me. So that's a little bit of an issue right there. That rubber handle is just sliding down, and in fact it's on a completely different handle section now. But smashing through, there you go. So that definitely did the work. Now granted, this ice is not very thick, maybe a couple of inches at most, but again, it did the work. And now for that sharpened section, you can actually get in and pry a little bit. You'll see how quick that went down and through. So making pretty easy work of this. That actually had no problem. Worked a little bit better than that blunt end. And just for the fun of it, one last time. There you go. Right down and through. So at this point, something worth mentioning, this point did get kind of rounded over, and that did not take a ton of force to do it. I mean, that ice wasn't super strong, and it was ice at that, so I mean, this is supposed to do the work, but you'll see at this point it is pretty well rounded over. So now continuing on with the tasks, just pulling this off of here. That now exposes the whistle and the fire steel, so we'll check that in a minute. But before we do, let's get into the knife a little bit. So here I found a piece of wood that has been already split down, making sure the knife is good and sturdy. I'm going to get a nice grip on it and just start to do a little bit of work. Now, how much work do I expect this is going to be able to do? Well, let's find out. I mean, in terms of carving, it can do it. I mean, that's some pretty decent curls right there. So just kind of planning myself out a piece of wood here so I can get started on some feather sticks. Now, I mean, there's all kinds of things you need a knife for. So I'm kind of using this tool in the wilderness application. I mean, there are endless uses for a knife. So, I mean, my doing this here is certainly not a like all-inclusive task, nor am I saying this is going to be the easiest task. There are other things, cutting, you know, rope and twine and things like that, and just general tasks, opening boxes, or I don't know, different reasons why you'd need a knife. Even food prep. I mean, if you were in a real shit hit the fan situation and needed a knife for some food prep, this would certainly do it. I mean, probably even processing game. You're certainly not going to be doing any real super heavy duty tasks, but I'm just curious if this will work. And I mean, in a pinch, if I needed it, there are some nice curls here. I mean, it's taking me a little bit to find the actual grind angle, but this is certainly sharp enough to do the work. I'm not 100% sure what kind of wood this is. I think this is a softwood now that I'm looking at it further. I think this is some kind of pine based on the little bits of bark that I see. But still, you know, it is capable of getting in and doing the work. And if you needed to, you can certainly come away with some curls. So collecting up these curls here, let's see if I could potentially start myself a little fire. Now I'm going to get just a few more curls here and gather these up, and then we'll spark them with the ferro rod. So I think my question now is, with all of the tools that you've been provided, what do you actually use to strike the ferro rod? Do you use a part of the shovel, or do you use the knife, or I don't know. That feels like it should do it there. So let me see. This is not going to be the easiest, and I probably should scrape away some of the coating. Now this is all coated, so I guess preparing this. There we go. Alright, so see how we do here. That's not the easiest. And of course, parts of the shovel are sharpened, so I'm trying to kind of handle this. What about the knife? Oh, that just pulled out. So the ferro rod just pulled out of this little, it's like a rubber holder thing there. So that you kind of need to keep in mind. So now it's getting even more awkward. I'm just looking for the right striker, and everything is like a little bit awkward, or another tool, or I don't know. That's got water in it. Struggling. Struggle. Hell with it. Let's just use the blade. There we go. So, I mean, it's awkward. This will certainly do the work. Now, I'm not thrilled about using the blade, but again, keeping in mind, maybe this is some sort of a, I don't know, wilderness accident. You know, I could really see using this potentially in like an ATV or something like that. So let's just say, for example, you had this packed up in the back of like an ATV, had an accident, something out in the wilderness, and you really needed some tools. I mean, at least at that point, you have a blade you could potentially spark the ferro rod. I mean, you saw it's doing the work. I wasn't doing a great job. It's awkward to hold on to this. I think if you process the wood down far enough and you were really careful and then you got a good spark, it would do it. Now, I'm not going to sit here and fight it. You know, I don't need to fumble too much more. I got a spark off of this. I definitely have at least a tool to do it. Is it ideal? No, but you can. So just looking at some of the additional tools on here, I mean, you have that pick. I could probably do a little bit of work, so let me configure this here and then use the pick for that application. But before I pack it all up, just going through the rest of this, at this point, we have used the knife, so getting that stowed away. We've used the ferro rod, and then the whistle. It'll do it. I really don't want to blow on it too loud out here, draw attention to myself unnecessarily. That icebreaker, which I'm really surprised and a little bit disappointed that that got bent, but it did. Reinstalling the shovel head. So now I have to ask the question whether or not these other tools are really, I don't know, viable. Is there going to be a chance that you have a hex head somewhere that you need to use a shovel head to fix it? Well, maybe. I mean, could you possibly? Yeah, possibly. Is it likely? Probably not. And then a bottle opener, I mean, it's just kind of cool. I guess I'd rather that be on there and have an option to use it if you kind of need it. But again, it's a little bit gimmicky to me. But then again, I guess these tools, sometimes that's what they're all about. So again, reconfiguring the head. This does go in another multitude of positions. So you, in theory, can put this kind of sideways. Now, that provides you with 2 or 3 additional tools. You can use this more like a hoe to do some more digging tasks. You can use this to kind of dig at the ground. Now, if you're not careful and you look at this here, as I tighten this up, that definitely has a good amount of play. So looking at it here, the stop is not machined quite as tight on the pick side as it is on the shovel head. So you end up with a little bit of a gap, and it kind of moves and wiggles on you. The other thing they say is you can use this to kind of hang a pot if you needed to. Now, I'm not sure really why you'd need to do that. Maybe if you wanted to dig something out of a fire, you could certainly use it. But for me, it's just a little bit awkward, and I'm not sure that's something I'd do. But getting into it here, if I wanted to use the pick for some digging, now again, the ground is, oop, that just completely spun on me. The ground is pretty well frozen here, so it's going to be a little bit difficult for this work. But just trying to get a feel for the tool and how effective it might be. Again, just with the idea that if you're not careful, the handle sections spin on you. So, and then you really want to be able to grab the rubber to tighten it down, but now the rubber spins and kind of, look at that, just slides all around. So it's a little bit awkward. And then grabbing the rubber, you'll see I just slid it right down the handle. This is not really working out the best. And then using the shovel head, actually this seems to work pretty well. Generally digging into the ground pretty easy. So depending on what you're trying to do, it can do the work. It's just a little bit awkward. Alright, so now just covering a couple of the last final tools. So as we get back into this section of the tool here and open all this stuff up, basically you will see the flashlight, which you can take this apart. There is a AA battery in there, and then you operate it basically by twisting the head and engaging the battery. The bits. What I'm not completely sure is if there's a driver somewhere, and if there's like another part of this that you can use as the actual bit driver. Keeping in mind, inside here was that wire saw. The back side has the compass. But in terms of using the bits, again, that's not something that for me I would say is like the most useful part of this kit. I like the idea that it's there, I guess, or you could at least use the cavity, like I mentioned, for a small fire kit, maybe a small med kit, something like that. A little bit gimmicky, but that is the nature of one of these multi-tools anyway. So now, fitting all of this back together and stowing everything away, what are my final thoughts? Well, it's a mixed review. I understand that these tools are not going to be very proficient at everything. Again, these are a jack of all trades, master of none. Some of these tools perform pretty well. I was actually quite happy with the wire saw, felt as though it performed well. Actually, even the knife did a pretty good job. You probably could have used that fish scaler, and I kind of wish I tried it to do some notching. Now, the saw on the shovel head also kind of worked reasonably well, and did also give me the ability to maybe do some notching if I needed it. The shovel can definitely do digging. It could also do some of the chopping, with the kind of downfall being that the handle was spinning on me so much, and then the handle and the rubberized part really just starting to move and walk on me. Now, I have to admit, I greased up all of my threads. Did some grease get in and around this and allow it to slip a little bit better? Sure. But fact of the matter is, that means it moved in the first place. So the fact that the rubberized handles moved in the first place and, you know, just continued to move around, I mean, that's not really my fault. I would say kind of a flaw with the type of manufacturing, and there's not much you could do about it. I just don't know if these handles are really kind of a long-term solution for something like this. The general construction on the head is okay. I think it would be nice to tighten up the tolerance just a little bit on the pick side to get that a little bit tighter. The head of the shovel was walking on me just a touch now, but when it's in the fully upright position, it definitely works fine. It's not a downfall completely, and I think it'll definitely do some work. Some of these other tools, a little bit hokey. The ability to smash was definitely there, but with the ice axe pick, whatever you want to call it, the actual ice pick, and the fact that it rounded over on me, kind of too bad. Catches me a little bit by surprise, and I would hope it would have performed a little bit better. So at this point, is this a tool for you? I don't know if it's really something that for me I would gravitate towards for a regular use. However, I do think there is some use for this in the back of kind of like an ATV, maybe a snowmobile, something like that, where you're going to go long distances far away with not a lot of resources available. Now maybe you're in the woods and you need something in a pinch. This would certainly do it. So for those reasons, I think this does have value. So again, I'd like to say thank you very much to Yeacool for sending this product for review. I think there are certainly some minor modifications. Generally speaking, I felt as though the construction seemed to be pretty sound. It's heavy, has good heft to it. Overall, reasonably durable, except for that one issue with that pick kind of rounding over on me. For the most part, I feel as though this performed reasonably well. So alright guys, thanks for stopping by. I hope you like what you saw. I hope you found it a little bit informative. If you like what you saw, please like, share, and subscribe. And as always, thanks for stopping by. Take care now. I'll see you soon.